If you're shopping around for PS2 JRPGs, you're not exactly wanting for options. The console's home to some real choice cuts, whether it's fantasy, sci-fi, steampunk, Wild West, abomination, baby hell. There's a game for all seasons, and few rank as highly across enthusiasts' tier lists as Persona 3. Cause it's good. I've been playing through the series and neither one or two really spoke to me. I thought they had killer lines here and there. I liked them okay, but I think the missing bit was a hearty dose of the bastardization of the SMT/Persona franchise. In that shard of the fanbase's eyes, anyway. Cause 3 got me no problem. In fact, Persona 3 was so interesting I had to make a gigantic critique video. So welcome to the KBash Persona 3 full game spoilers retrospective analytical critique hour. Featuring intellectual autofellatio. There'll be criticisms, there'll be observations, all kinds of things. But will there be terrible skits? There'll be piss! It's worth noting up front that Persona 3 has problems, stuff that's hard to justify, from annoying mechanical mishaps to stuff so sympathetically obnoxious. It's hardly controversial to point it out, and that's saying something for the SMT community. It's not like dev time was too short to notice, right? Poring over interviews, a lot of the choices I didn't immediately understand seem intentional, to fit with broader themes, to better convey the narrative. Most of it's inoffensive, but we'll drop a word when we get there. More interesting is the budget. Not a lot exists online about the budget, just that it's roughly comparable to Persona 4's. I can't imagine a game like P3, no matter how good, was pulling from an account lined with gold. It makes a game of reusing assets, and that's not a bad thing, inherently. I'm really impressed by what they accomplished with what they had. Persona 3 comes in 3 flavors, vanilla, FES, and portable. Now Festival is the version I'm on. It's the original game, expanded, in a phrase, and the one most likely recommended by longtime fans. The portable version adds and subtracts, lets you be a girl, and it's probably worth a play if you're trying to brain Shinji. Anyway, Persona 3 gets talked up and down the internet. People have things to say, and I'm really not here to get in anybody's way, or dunk on the fanbase, or whatever. I like my little hermit island just fine. And like I said, Persona 3 is pretty cool, but I'm also trying to engage with the work at a critical level, and I know that's kind of hard for some people to grasp, especially because I sometimes use
sentence enhancers.
So, a couple acknowledgements. Persona 3 has material some people might find objectionable, including depictions and discussions of self-harm, and other tactless stuff. We acknowledge that the game was likely developed on a sub-AAA budget, that we're critiquing a story translated, likely imperfectly, from Japanese, and that the game retains a lot of regional tropes, let's say. I'm out of euphemisms, dude. Alright, already, pull the trigger! Persona 3 is a game where you piss to feel great. Hideo Kojima approved? Like any fiction, you gotta know the premises and nouns the game's working with. Persona 3 carries a lot of things over from its earlier games, like demons, high school, even talking. It's perfectly marketed to socially awkward young people, and don't lie about that shit. I see you. It's a safe place to live another, better life. They get to go to school, be a hot boy, be liked, and uniquely equipped to save the world. It's no wonder people like this game, right? With a base like that, all you gotta do is press the make game good button during development and you're rolling in dough. Except obviously not. Game dev is a f***ing nightmare, and Persona 3 does a lot of work on every level to make the game likable. A lot of things that get ignored by the old school fans who hate these games. The resident 2 anime hater crowd. But you don't pull numbers like this for nothing. Either way, I think any kind of hate seed starts with the premise. You're a nameless kid who's destined to save the world. Your parents are dead. You have a power nobody else does, that being taking on multiple personas, giving you greater flexibility in battle. You seem competent immediately after realizing your strength. Damn, can you suck your own too? By all metrics, this is a shonen anime setup. Sometimes this concept gets bashed as unrelatable, but personally, I really relate to the protagonist. I was a huge nerd. I worked a ton of hours in high school, my skin was pretty clear, and I was the prom king, going out with the prom queen, who is now my wife. Come at me, bro. And really, a story's value lies more in what the writers do and say with a setup rather than the tropes they draw from. Now, any anime protag needs some nouns and complications, so bam, there's a dark hour, a secret hour starting after midnight where the world goes green and normal people turn into coffins. Also, it allows shadowy monsters to somewhat harmlessly roam the streets, but turns depression into an epidemic. Unfortunately, the writers didn't predict that depression's now an epidemic. Persona users, unlike previous previous games, randomly awake to their power and usually harness their newfound abilities by pointing an evoker, also called a gun, at their head and pulling the trigger. Now, when I saw this, my first thought was, Jesus Christ, guys, why would you show that to your highly depressed audience? Every Persona user or Persona-sensitive person is free to roam around during this mostly frozen time. So obviously, the heroes are trying to end the dark hour, shadows, and depression, and the bad guys are breaking into cute girls' houses and stealing their shoes. So you move into your new dorm, meet some new friends, get roped into using your newly awoken power by the organization of depression haters, and slowly uncover the histories of said friends and the organization you've joined, all while going to school, learning how to live, and spending thousands on food. A piece of life advice, kid. Learn to cook. Oh, I know, wieners and beans sounds awful, till you can pay your mortgage. Like with the setup, Persona 3 has got a lot going on in terms of raw gameplay. Like a lot. Time management's the name of the game, and I'm pretty sure it evokes two reactions from people. Either, this is too much, I can't do this, I'm calling the wambulance, or cool, I can strategize my time. I'm in the latter camp. I love managing time. Made a career out of it, because I know I can trust the devs enough that not every second has to be maximized, and what's left is a mosaic of my own autonomous choices. It's kind of empowering. Some people hate this, and I don't really blame them, because you're not completing the game, like getting all social links maxed or whatever, without a guide. But you really should just play freely. It's not a competitive thing, you know, chill out. Most days and some nights are spent doing that kind of real-life stuff, going to school, talking to your, contemporaries.
Teacher, me don't get this. Die.
And screwing around about town. The rest of your nights, when you're not engaged in some underage drinking, are spent in Tartarus, a giant tower that the school morphs into during the dark hour. If we were to perform a video game analysis here, we'd have to look at the school's contorted, alien form and its deadly inhabitants as representative of the youth's struggle with adolescence and the need to climb higher in life, achieve higher status by more thoroughly engaging with life and its challenges. But then we'd also have to entertain the Freudian phallic angle, and I don't think my audience likes when I talk about cock. Otherwise, you're leveling up, finding and fusing demons to access more moves, playing a JRPG. What's unique about Persona 3, more than its social links and time management and all that other stuff, is how completely it integrates its themes into gameplay. Everything about Persona 3 is informed by a few key concepts: time, leadership, and the Fool's Journey. Last history lesson, I promise. The Fool's Journey is the story of the tarot cards, and if you've never heard of them, go read a book. The tarot is a pack of cards traditionally used in some games and as commonly mythologized to tell fortunes. That aspect of the tarot's use has a story represented in its major arcanas. The magician, the hanged man, strength, temperance, the devil, you get the point. Each represents a stage in the fool's life. Most major characters in Persona are associated with an arcana, which pretty accurately describe what the character's about. Like the fat kid's the moon, cause he's shaped like the moon. The main character is usually represented by the fool, because they've gotta go on a journey.
A fool's journey.
In any case, social situations and real-life stuff occupy half the game time, so let's talk about time. Life is really hard, even in high school, when it's measurably easier for some people, you know, not paying rent or what. There's just too much to do. Between eating well, exercising, your friends, potty, dating, jobs, chores, school, homework, hobbies, something's gonna suffer. No one can do it all. So, for the young fool, life is hard. You've got to balance everything while managing JRPG progression month over month. Obviously, the game can't snatch up half its runtime in text and other fluff without compensation, so most of what you do is an excuse to buff the player in various ways, or to unlock other paths to power. Case in point, social links and social stats. Social stats tend to unlock access to new things like deeper social links with certain characters and other minor rewards. Academics, courage, and charm. You've got to get smart, get tough, and get coochie. Now I know some cynic is out there seething like, oh yeah, I'm sure you get tough singing karaoke. Yeah, alright Richard, why don't you throw on your favorite song by your favorite band and sing it for the class? No? Too chicken sh**? Sit the f*** down, Richard. You get points automatically sometimes, like at school, just staying awake in lectures can pump your academics. You get charm for answering right, though I definitely opened a guide more than once to get the most points. I only really knew the composition questions, honestly. Finally, my degree is paying off. Otherwise, you're stuck sucking up time that'd be better spent more interestingly elsewhere, and I don't really like how they monopolize your time early on. If you want good stats, you've got to put in the effort, which only puts pressure everywhere else. Thankfully, it's never overly punishing. Like, yeah, you can grind up max academics early and ace every exam, but all you get is some Persona stat-boosting crap, another dating option, and a spacious new hangout. So the fun and time management can be strained, but it's still open to player autonomy. Social links, more commonly known as having friends, is the system Persona replaced demon contacts with, and yeah, after playing all those, back to back, not surprised. I know it's a loss for older fans, but man, if you want to tell me Eternal Punishment didn't get silly with cards, if you want to tell me you've never exploited contacts to swerve whole dungeons in Persona 1, I want you to know. I'm really sorry for you. Most social links take up your after-school time block, though you eventually unlock nighttime links and the Sunday link. Others are automatic, like the Fool and Death Arcanas, leveling up between major story events. And you know they're important. Igor tells you straight up, your power comes from your bonds, which more literally translates to having a high social link rank with a given arcana grants newly fused personas increasingly high bonus experience points. So yeah, direct line between friends and JRPG power. Neat. I don't think it's necessary to break down every single social link for the purposes of critique. Broadly, they exist to tell sub-stories, get the player to help with a problem or two, and by the end, the player hopefully learns something. And if not, they've taught the friend something instead. Like that dating teachers is a really big problem when you're 17. Magician Arcana, huh? Maybe you should cast a spell and make your wand disappear. In any case, they get criticism from some people who don't really like compartmentalizing character development into small, obvious, bite-sized mini-stories, and well, yeah, it's not exactly natural. They're not part of the overarching plot of the Depression Killer Squad, and I'll admit as well that many of them are overfluffed to fit within the 10 levels of friendship structure, meaning 10 cutscenes per social link, which is totally unnatural, visibly sculpted. It's for sure not how to tell stories. And worst of all, by the end they start dragging time out in a 60-hour JRPG, and a few are really boring. It's not a perfect system. But I like the social links. There's a novelty in just talking to people. I think it's cool that forming bonds with people gives you a mechanical benefit. I really enjoy being around some of these characters. I mean, I tend not to get that deeply involved with the world of the characters of a JRPG. Persona 3 made me. Unfortunately, many of the best social links require unlocking, and one too many of them focus on weird, small, or kinda irrelevant problems. I think of guys like Kaz, and hey, I like the guy, but his story about trying to win the track meet, finding out his knee is borked, and agonizing for like 7 cutscenes about whether he should permanently damage his knee or be 1% intelligent because he made a promise to a 5-year-old. Get a f***ing grip, Kaz. So that's why you're the chariot arcana, huh? Because you're gonna need wheels once your story's through? Others show despicable characters getting better thanks to the protagonist. Whoa. I knew this game was horny, but man, maybe it's time to find God. And this one's about a f***ing narc. But really, the game tries to make them sad, emotionally impactful at times. There's a good amount of variance. They're all dramatic in one way or another.
She's asking about kids? Advice. Run.
And seeing all your social link pals at the end of the game is a special kind of high you wouldn't expect, especially if you didn't really enjoy all of them. I guess some stuff does get good 60 hours later. Now, a lot of people make the waifu joke, like, you can date girls in Persona 3, and date other girls behind their back. Total waifu game. Absolute cringe. Anime! And then it's just a bunch of buzzwords and phrases, like some people are pathologically dead set against the boogeyman that is Persona 3. As though Maya from 2 wasn't supposed to be waifu material with her catchphrases and her obvious attraction to a high schooler. Yeah, okay, groomer. I will say, the weakest parts of the entire system involve possible girlfriends, because you can date a character, but if you date too much and then go too far with someone else, you're in trouble. And in my experience, even following advice online, I couldn't just instantly reverse the problem. Yeah, you can screw up your relationships in Persona 3. It's kinda nice. In a game where dating any girl you want is totally possible, where you're the fool and it's your journey, it's a nice reminder that these characters are intended to be people. And just because you're the main character doesn't mean you're the god pharaoh of these lowly NPCs. So it's a good thing, but it also kinda sucks, cause then you're forced to hurt feelings and be an asshole if you want maximum benefits. Now, to be clear, I didn't follow a guide, so this didn't happen to me. I didn't have perfect stats or even max every social link. Yeah, I know, what a monster. But the emergent mechanical choice in that style of play is that you'll gravitate to certain kinds of personas with certain abilities, focus on those arcanas instead of just doing the best thing because you read the guide. So the weakness becomes a strength, and you can always start another cycle at the end. The more obvious weakness is that once social links are done, they're done. You've got too much to do, too little time. If you date a girl for a few months, you won't ever see her again. Like, okay, you can go on dates and hangouts with no mechanical benefit, but in a game with so much to do and so many deadlines, it's almost guaranteed that your girlfriend just hangs out, eternally lonely once you're maxed out, watching you get friendly with everyone else. Anyway, here's a pillow, sweetie. Just pretend it's me. I'm farming. So the social link characters are people, but only in as much as value can be extracted from them. While I like the social links overall, I'm still shocked by which ones open up the latest. I barely even hinted at the party this entire time, just shown some footage of them, but they're talking to you from the start of the game. They're your best friends and functional coworkers, and you can't social link with them until much later in the game, compared to total randoms and other school kids. And that's only if they're women! I mean, look at Yukari. Requires maxed charm to even start. And this is a person whose life you save multiple times, who you converse with almost daily, who you share an intimate moment with, and who opens up to you about her family issues before you can link with her. Reminder that level 1 is a quote faint connection. But we needed a reason to max out the charm stat, right? She's popular after all. It's just not all that graceful, and no, it's not some massive issue, so let's move on. Before I end this bit about social links, I want to take special care highlighting the Sunday link, the MMORPG link. Now I have to mention it's about you playing a game with a stranger online, and they're called Maya, and you're called Tatsuya, in a nod to Persona 2 in the English version only. And I have to specify this, or 40 people with walnut brains will comment, but did you get the reference? Ugh. So, spoiler alert, it turns out Maya is your teacher, Miss Toriyumi, and she reveals that she's in love with a student. To you! And it's you that she's in love with! Now, I might be more sensitive to stuff like this because I've worked in education, but that... Like, you're going to prison, lady. Problem is, it's mostly hearsay, right? The game doesn't really treat it like a big problem. You know, fun story. I get this magazine about teaching, and they've got these blue pages where they list all the people who got terminated in the region since the last edition. Lot of names in there. Anyway, the game is about to go offline for good near the end, and she says she'll save your chat logs and send them to the company to prove people care about their game. That face when you're going to jail because you turned in the smoking gun? Are you f***ing insane? That shit is incriminating, dude! Okay, fine, maybe it's one step from incriminating, but if you don't get fired or jailed, you're definitely getting suspended. Dear God. But don't worry, she relents and thinks better of it. Because she complained about her coworkers too much in the chat logs. And not because she wants to boink a student. I will say, the reveal scene at the end of the game was worth every second, though. But for all that teacher affair stuff, in like 2 links, what the heck? I'm not sure what to say. I think it's straight up objectionable, but maybe it's just a cultural artifact from early 2000s Japan. Maybe they were just having some fun. Because the game has its fair share of weird, unnecessary, red flag stuff. But let's open that train of thought up to the broader concept of aesthetics and presentation. We'll start with a softball. Persona 2 in particular started a visual shift that modernized the series' presentation. And 3 was like, what if graphic design all of the time? Because there's a lot of JRPGs that are jumbles of visual and others mostly stuck in their roots, so Persona's devs, I guess, commanding one of the strongest modern Japan JRPGs, made it modern and kept it fresh going forward. As we go through the games, I'll bring this up more, but P3 absolutely batters any complaint about generic modern setting into the dirt with aesthetics alone. The characters are visually interesting. The smooth appeal of every major area turns a microcosm of a city that might have been disappointing given the breadth of 2's world into a place worth exploring. You'll see these areas many times throughout the game, and that's probably because of the budget, but because the context is always shifting, because the cutscenes that use these areas rely on characters, the game gets away with murder. It's like how normal spaghetti and spaghettini and pesto is 2 different meals. What do you mean that's not normal? That goes double for Tartarus, which uses 6 different sets of visuals and minimally variant procedural generation. Things don't really change much between floors or blocks, and the enemies all get reused repeatedly. And the game's still beautiful, still interesting. I mean, the minute I turned on Persona 4, I was like, I missed 3, and that game's real beautiful. The sleek menu design with flat colors and simple shapes naturally complements the bright but never busy setting. It's real hip-like, you know? I may be looking at a blue menu, but unlike some other f***ing game I can't think of right now, I can read the text. The music, I wasn't into it at first, and now I can't imagine starting a Persona battle without... Like all the Persona music from 1 to 3 is brainworms, sticks in your skull, and I kinda hate it that way. Obviously my taste is impeccable, you know, Chrono Cross OST, Nier OST, the Counting Octopath Traveler OST, and with that lineup, you know I only listen to fantasy flutes. But I think the songs fit the modern vibe even if the rap tracks are a little weird at first. The only thing really worth digging at regarding presentation is... how do I even talk about this? So this game gets dragged sometimes for being too anime, and yeah, aside from its general shonen approach of friendship is power, it's got a lot of weird baggage with its women characters, and I'm gonna talk about them soon enough, but let me just say that Yukari is one of the most realistically written women I've seen in a video game. From having unresolved traumas to being hot and cold with the rest of the cast, a lot about her dialogue sympathetically reminds me of the women I've met and conversed with in real life. So when I, sitting there while being generally impressed with her characterization, equipped her with a piece of clothing that made her uncomfortable because it was a weird bikini armor piece, heaved a sigh and went, oh. There's no real way around this, and feel free to drop a comment about dragging, quote, politics into the video. We're treating characters like they're human and doing a good job of it, only to turn around and treat them like objects of desire. Well, it's not my cup of tea. It's a regressive way to handle people, fundamentally, and I'm usually okay with it under one condition, and that's that the male characters get the same treatment. Which they don't, and don't bring up Akihiko in the beach scene. Sure, guy's got a little banana hammock dealie, that's fine. It just feels like the skimpy bikini armor sets exist as rewards for sticking out dungeon crawling like, yeah, we know Tartarus is a little boring sometimes, why not jerk off? And it falls into a tropey anime schlock trance at times, notably the bathhouse scene late in the game, which is dramatic and funny.
She'll execute us. Silence! I'm going to execute you all!
It doesn't always have to be, this cultural baggage doesn't fit well with the West, or this is so anime, oh. Like, you can enjoy what they're giving you. The voice actors pull some pretty great performances overall, enough to carry scenes that might not work as well in the West. The real problem here, though, regardless of all that stuff, is that one weird beach character who's clearly a cross-dresser, or actually just trans. It isn't stated outright, and they're depicted as an older individual trying to use one of the guys as
boy toy?
and that's really not good. I get that this game started development in 2003 and whatnot, but Persona 5 did something similar and got a ton of backlash for it, enough that they changed the scene in the enhanced port. So what I'm getting at is, don't use people you transparently don't understand for a punchline when possible, and learn your lesson the first time. I know there's no morally pure work, and frankly, art that's totally morally pure risks being outright boring, and it's often wrong to impose Western cultural perspectives on Japan, but I think the issue's big enough, especially today looking back, that it deserves mention anyway. It doesn't take away my love for the game, it's just frustrating. Alright, we gotta take a break. Let's hit the dungeon already. Tartarus is the seemingly impossible task your party deals with over the course of the game. It's a tower of over 200 floors, divided into 6 segments with a similar but additive track that rises as the player climbs higher. So if anyone ever asks, how do I make decent JRPG dungeons on a budget? Here's the answer. Because by all metrics, Tartarus should suck. It's repetitive, it's samey, the challenge presented to the player doesn't vary between floors or blocks meaningfully. I mean, yes, sometimes the game throws you a curveball by separating your team or something, but otherwise it's the same set of tasks against the same enemies from start to finish, and somehow it's fun. Maybe it's the rare chests, maybe it's the random rare enemies and weird stuff that happens, but I think it's because a ton of the game is spent ignoring the JRPG, like not really worrying about your stats or your personas, so when you finally do go back, you're usually recharged and ready to deal with the grind. And it is a grind. Here's how the game structures it. Every full moon, you have to fight a story boss and get strong enough to handle those mandatory battles. The player is strongly urged to climb as high as possible in Tartarus in the days leading up to the fight, so you have a set number of days, you're already juggling a ton of other engagements from social links to studying, and it becomes part of the grand strategy. Your engagement is still fundamentally autonomous, and it gives you reasonable limits and goals by capping off further climbing once you hit certain checkpoints, usually after 2 or 3 mini-bosses, which tend to be stronger than many of the story bosses. In short, if you can handle Tartarus, you can handle the story. So while you're effectively forced into grinding up levels because damage directly scales relative to level, so you will conform or die, you know you're getting something out of it. You're being given a really clear measuring stick for your own progress. You can just take whole days off when you're done. It's kinda great. And between randomized rewards, persona fusion, and other junk, you're probably gonna be too busy to notice the frustrations. What the f*** just happened? Okay, playing back the footage, it appears I entered the second block for the first time, turned a corner into an enemy I didn't notice was glowing red, nor had encountered that kind of thing before, and was promptly one-shot, forcing a game over. So here's what you're gonna have to accept if you play this game. The main character dying is a game over. I get that it's his journey, but my friends are right there. I have revival items in my inventory. Are you seriously telling me? Junpei looked at my corpse, turned fully evil, and said, "Looks like I'm the leader now. You simpering bag, I'll kill you!" So the reason for this, I guess, is the developers wanted to make the player the leader and everyone else their own person, except when they need some quick yen on a Friday night. And the player is the leader. They put him in charge from the start. He's uniquely powerful, right? And common knowledge suggests the leader of a group dying kills the group. It just doesn't make any mechanical sense, regardless of how well it gels with themes and the narrative. Junpei might be stupid, but he's not too stupid to use items. Is he? Is Junpei too stupid to use items? And it's only really frustrating because I didn't really do anything wrong. Like, yeah, I didn't look. I should have been careful and got the first attack bonus by surprising the enemy with a preemptive strike. But I didn't know that there were glowing super enemies until this fight. Whatever, the combat in general is really fun, an enormous step in a new direction for JRPG Combat, because for the first time in any of these games, I thought, damn, I just had fun. Not once in those other games. Combat is smooth, it's kinetic and alive, it's high risk, high reward, it's fun. The major mix-up involves weaknesses. If you hit an enemy with an element they're weak to, they'll fall over, forcing them to spend a turn getting up and giving the player who hit the weakness another free attack. So knowing enemy weaknesses can totally break action parity in your favor. You can sweep shadows off the face of the earth with a little knowledge. If every enemy is downed at the same time, you can initiate an all-out attack for big AoE damage. It's really helpful for clearing floors quickly. This is helped by, again, making sure to hit enemies first before combat to guarantee the first attack. The danger is that the enemy can do all that stuff too, minus the all-out attack, and critical hits knock you down as well, and again, grant another attack to the guy lucky enough to score a crit. So you can find yourself on the bad end of a sweep by getting unlucky, and yeah, it's uncommon, but the point is when combat's in a lull, the threat of explosive damage is always bubbling under the surface, and when combat's getting spicy, you're either scared shitless or grinding the enemy under your heel. It's a vital and engaging way to stage gameplay, and mechanically matches the feel of life lived to its fullest, a theme the game constantly supports. I feel like I should talk personas and mini-bosses here, but it's tough, because you only engage with the persona system to get new moves and stats when your old ones just aren't good enough anymore. I fused this 4-element persona early on, and it ground everything in the early game into chum for nearly 40 levels, because you really only need a couple other personas for heavy-hitting attacks and support moves otherwise. Having access to all elements is really potent, regardless of how strong they are. I will say, I don't care for the fused personas turning into other personas at random thing, like Igor. Man, mean what you say and say what you mean, and quit hanging out with strange women. You're enough, man. You gotta look in the mirror and say, I'm enough. God. Anyway, the mini-bosses on the way up the tower tend to be stronger than many story bosses, but that doesn't mean they're mechanically interesting. A lot of them are hard DPS checks or healing power checks. Sometimes you'll even have to fuse a certain persona just to cheese the odd boss because they're designed so narrowly. It's not incredible, but I found the story interesting enough to stay motivated. Everyone's still waiting for the party talk, huh? Alright, one of the big complaints this game gets, and something that was changed in the portable version, is uncontrollable party members. Now, you can give them suggestions with the tactics menu, but otherwise they're doing their own thing. From prodding at the enemy with attacks you already know don't work, to just sitting around because the AI doesn't think it can do anything. They're not even authorized to use items outside of some basic healing stuff. On one hand, this is great because it really highlights that you're the leader, but the party's still full of individual thinking people that need to be treated with a modicum of respect. And Junpei. And it saves a ton of time having the system automate itself for you, only having to really worry about your own actions. Again, great theming as well. But the problem is, I need a strong mass heal, and Yukari just won't activate it unless she's hurt as well. And that's really annoying because I'd rather lose out on potential MP savings if it means I don't have to spend future turns reviving and rehealing anyone that gets one shot because Yukari won't get with the program! It's really not that bad. I appreciate the speed of play automation allows for. It's just really noticeable in certain high-stakes battles. But if we're gonna talk about party members, we're gonna have to talk about them all in a big list. Plot talk, spoilers, you know the score. Let's go. Junpei is a hybrid best bud rival character. He does the stupidest, most unbelievable flatlining ape-brain stuff on the planet. He's a greasy around women, except goths, I guess, but you love him regardless. Or not, I'm projecting here. Without Junpei, the party'd be really boring. There'd be no one to laugh at.
Ace detective? Are you stupid or something? More like Stupe, ace defective.
If I played the clip of how hard I laughed at this scene, there would be a visible dip in viewer retention. And he's behind some of the most emotionally charged scenes in the game, so yeah, all around, we heart Junpei. Now in combat, he's pretty good, but my character felt his physical bruiser role better than him, and he's kinda short on combat options, so take him or leave him. Like I mentioned, Yukari is really well written, and I know it's a meme in the community, like, ugh, Yukari's such a bitch. She's so rude. Look, man, people have traumas, perspectives, stigmas, faults, foibles. If a character's making you react emotionally, they're probably a good character. I like that Yukari's set up in that very obvious main character's love interest role, but totally denies the player that easy satisfaction with her max charm requirement. She's uncompromising. She doesn't exist to serve the player's desires or as wish fulfillment. Oh, motherfuck! Mitsuru is a little hard to care about at first. It's obvious she's hiding information from the player. She only lends non-combat support at first, but as the plot unfolds, you realize she's a useful character to introduce mystery and history to the story, and experiences character development after a certain reveal. In short, she's inextricable from the plot, and her social link, provided you max academics, is really endearing. Exploring a sheltered wealth-class character who isn't inherently antagonistic towards everyone else. I just love that bonus scene about Junpei's room. Calls the cops thinking there was a robber, and you'd think because she's the executioner that she'd scream at the guy, but she just looks forlorn. Truly incapable of understanding. It's incredible. In combat, she's fairly useful, but her main draw is damage, and unfortunately, she'll constantly buff herself before attacking, wasting vital time in specific battles. So, Akihiko is a character, at least when the plot needs him to be. He's also got history as deep as Mitsuru's, and he's interesting when he gets time to act on screen. But in extra scenes and other ambient content, he's written like an actual one-dimensional character, always going on about training this, training that. Damn, that movie was good. It makes me want to go train. Oh, beach time. Thankfully, I've concocted an epic training regimen. Would you get a hobby? Otherwise, Akihiko is an eternally useful character with a good mix of damage, heals, and support spells. I used them whenever I could. Fuka exists. She's beloved by many, presumably by people who like the low self-esteem quiet girl, and that's about it. She lends support so Mitsuru can fight and doesn't occupy too much time or space. She's helpful for the dynamic. I wouldn't really call any of the other characters sweet, except this goblin bastard. But since her chance of stepping on you is so low, I'll have to move on. Shinji is great. I love Shinji. Look at how cool this guy looks. Look at that damage. Why? Why would you do this to me, Atlas? How could you take my golden boy? I lost the coolest guy in the game, and all I got was a kid. Ken's fine. He's part of the backstory to the game involving Akihiko and Shinji. I fielded him on occasion, but really he seems to exist so that Shinji doesn't, and so Akihiko can have a motivator later. And really, aside from Akihiko's development, I'm not sure the game would look much different without Ken. But I guess the little kawaii desu mud skipper character adds variance to a party of dripped up teenagers, so fine. Koromaru is a dog and doesn't talk or have a ton of scenes relevant to the plot. Some people say best dog, I say there's no other dog in the game. Also, I just never fielded the dog in combat. Yukari's right, throwing an animal into the line of fire is screwed up. I'm shocked she didn't flip her lid openly when Ken joined, it's insane. Agus is complex, she's got the same weakness as Yukari, the main healer, so it's a toss-up if you're gonna field her or not. She's also a robot who doesn't understand humanity, which the game reminds the player of frequently. Enough to make me worry during the playthrough that I wasn't doing something to flip a switch and make her human, I guess. But she develops over time and becomes very important by the end, enough that she goes from what I considered a low-tier character to the heights of the list. She's great. Granted, a lot of her development is couched in the idea of understanding the meaning of life, and like, if you haven't figured out that it's to make your own meaning yet, you might be 17. What I'm getting at is the dramatic crux of her character isn't super revelatory or novel, but it is powerful watching something gain sentience and humanity, especially when they start out so awkward and have so many endearing comedic scenes.
That's unlawful
Yeah, you
entry.
tell her.
And if you like her, Persona 3 FES has the whole expansion dedicated to her. But we should really dig into the plot before that. I think Persona 3 has its moments, genuinely interesting, heartrending, inspiring moments, and I don't think those feelings come from actual events, per se. Let me explain. Like most stories I cover and enjoy, I think the characters carry the plot. Early on, Junpei endangers the party by running off, and his pathological stupidity almost gets the party killed. But it's not because the event happened at a train station or that they were almost killed that's important. It's Junpei's actions, the consequences, and the resolution, which are all carried by the actors on screen. The story lies more in that Yukari's always being rude to Junpei, but she doesn't shriek at him this time, and that he isn't immediately torn into by everyone around him. There's a story in that interaction. The game delivers its plot in protracted cutscenes, occasionally partway through a given month or during the full moon when the bosses attack. The intention is clearly to spread it out, drip feed it to the player, and keep them engaged throughout this excessively long JRPG. And my guess is it's structured like that for two reasons. One, this is during the time when the cry for longer games, so you got your money's worth or whatever, was very popular. And two, because if the player spends a lot of time getting to know the world and characters, mastering the environment and the JRPG, the party elements, etc., they're gonna love the game no matter what story gets told. It's only icing if the story is actually good. So they rely on characters, moments, on vignettes, and on emotional scenes, with characters gaining, learning, loving, and losing, with active character development. And you can't miss the important stuff because it's not locked on some small skippable text box, it's acted in your face. Thank God for 3D graphics. As I've said many times, with many games, the actual events of the plot aren't next level writing, but the characters take it home. And it's not to say that the writing's bad, hardly. I think the characters are written well, largely believable, and the dramatic spikes throughout are fine. Yeah, not every single scene lands, specifically all the absurd ways Junpei screws up. Yes, the game makes hefty use of exposition at times, but it's a game with characters grounded in the world, with history, where everyone's got a story. You're gonna stumble into some weird exposition because it's an expedient way to give information.
You see, my parents have an inferiority complex because all my relatives are doctors.
That's not something you'd say in America, to anyone. But to be fair, the complex thing gets brought up a lot in anime, because it's a common use term in Japan. The joys of translation. In any case, you're not gonna have a perfect show-don't-tell tale in a 60-hour JRPG, dude. It's just not happening. And yeah, it's a little hokey that having a moment of character crisis or development causes these people's personas to upgrade. Like, you really don't have to spell it out to me, dude. But it wouldn't be Persona without that kind of thing, so it's permitted by premise. Really, the value of the story is its own persistence in pushing the themes set from the start. Leadership, time, and the fool's journey. And really, those are part and parcel. The main character leads, is frequently pulling the party together through the various trials that appear month after month. He's tested constantly and always triumphs over both himself and the opposition. Even outside the main plot, everything you, the protagonist, do is related to the fool's journey, the major arcanas, following every step, absorbing new experiences and perspectives, facing temptation, holding fast, falling over, and standing again. It's not some mind-blowing truth, it's not some opus-level work, it's just intelligent design. Quality planning. I said in my first video that I had a hard time caring about high schoolers and their comparatively small struggles, but when you give them time to mature, show so much, give them so many scenes and interactions, connect them all to you directly, you can't help but care about them. It's the great triumph of modern Persona, I'd say, creating pathos with its many interwoven systems and stories, its broadly appealing visuals, with its smart recycling of assets that give its characters a memorable stage to flourish. Anyway, some weird stuff happens and the crew hangs around for a bit, then you're finally able to move on to the endgame. Now for at least half the game, you're followed around by these weird bums who don't really care about real life, and just want to be powerful in the dark hour. It could have been an interesting dilemma for Junpei, maybe turn him against the party, because their conflict is exactly his own. He knows he's basically a good-for-nothing outside of fighting, and it's a bit of a shame they didn't push that angle. It might be his smartest choice though, because damn, that was easy. Persona 3 is fairly difficult at certain points, but almost never the bosses. Some of the tower fights, yeah, but it's almost like the game's preparing you with the Tartarus checkpoints to sweep the story bosses. And that makes sense, because they really can't account for your personas or your party members. There's no save points for full hours of play at times, and you really can't predict what attacks a boss will have, so mostly everything from these hulking arcana shadows to the scions of Dan Schneider just topple over. And the final boss ain't much better. One thing that really stood out to me when I started Persona 4 was the increased boss complexity, at least early on. Like almost nothing in Persona 3 has any mechanical depth at all. It's just deal damage, heal damage, knock down, don't get knocked down, sometimes use status ailments and tactics. But there's nothing really especially complex about that stuff, it's just knowing and using your options. Look at the first boss in Persona 4. This thing can cast a spell to resist its weakness, so you can't knock it down, summons an add-on that will regularly heal the boss, and your one character that's capable of really knocking the tar out of these guys is constantly getting down because the boss is elementally opposite to her. It's tough, and that's just the first major boss. Persona 3's final boss goes through every arcana, so 13 forms, and needs to be pummeled to death in each, but they barely change, just in terms of weaknesses, spells cast, and status ailments available. They're really easy to tear through too, until the final one. And at that final step, after spamming your strongest spells and healing a bit, its big mechanical complication is a damage shield, where you wait for 2 turns or get smoked on the crackback. It's the lamest shit I've ever seen, no offense, I love this game, but at least put up more than a number struggle, like do anything cool. At least it's on theme, right? It's going through the fool's journey and arrives at death. Why are you separating the protagonist from the party, Atlas? Hey, why's my character only got a couple of moves that'll take all his life force to— Oh no. Persona 3 is a game about life, as told through the Fool's Journey. It's a message to live life to the fullest, to make genuine relationships and keep them well, to take your time when you need it. It's an extremely sobering experience when you spend literally every day working on videos and recording video games, afraid your steady existence will collapse, when it's inevitable anyway. There's so much other life I've probably missed out on. Damn. So no, it's not my favorite game of all time, but it's an incredible ride. A bite-sized life lived full, and nothing could ever tarnish that. I just don't get it. The answer was tacked onto the FES version of P3, and it's decent enough. It's locked on hard mode, you're playing as Aigis who can't piss to feel great. Incidentally, I hear Kojima didn't like this edition. There's a new character, apparently another Aigis, and she's cool. I like her hammer. Normally there'd be nothing to say, it's just more Persona 3, but tougher if you played on normal. Apparently this intro fight is scripted so that it's impossible to lose. And cut the clip. The answer's big problem isn't its difficulty or its content. Not really. Instead it's kind of a yikes for opting to undo the protagonist's sacrifice, show that he kinda died for nothing, which I know, not necessarily true. He staved off an incredible evil, he took the fall, and it'd be stupid to assume, especially regarding the Fool's Journey, which as a concept has no true conclusion, that it wouldn't just repeat ad nauseum from the beginning, that evil was vanquished for good. We know evil is forever. Socks and Sandals is back. Mosquitoes are there, and they have mosquitoes. Texas is a state. Evil is another part of reality, and maybe it's hopeful in a way. Maybe it means we'll see him again someday. Hey, it's KBash. Special thanks goes out to my $4 patrons, whose names are on the screen. The show's on its way somewhere good thanks to the community's generosity. And special thanks goes out to my extra generous patrons who are Alexa, Andy Blarg, Arch, Basement Dweller, BZ Soul, Boha, Brios, Cal, Can I Cuss on Here? Caesar T, Cordant, Chris A, Christo009, Cody Golden, Corgi the Lad, Couch MOBA, Crater, CW Glassworks, Kyle Laprede, Daddy Dagoth, Dakota Storm Jones, Dondium, Danky Stank Swanky Make, Dara, David Castillo, Decode, Den Het, Desdemona, Dylan Coffee, 8-Bit Funk, LPO, Elsa, Annex, Aesthetico, Exa, Frankenstitch, Glyph Seeker, Guard Corey, Gucci Plant, Hatsune Miku's Crack House, Harkaj, Heman Damon Station, Hexmex, Huey, Ingenious Clown, I Punched a Sandwich, Irradiated Cherries, Ice Kyle, Ivy Ruth Langley, Jason Lasky, Jaden, Jdaeus, John Weber, Joke Frog, Keegan Too Cool, Clocked, Creighton, Crazy Dark Chocolate, Latrix, Laundry Mom, Lego Sid, Lon, Lucas Boyd, Magical Madman, Marcules, Maximilian Wolfgang Niver, Mike DeVR, Milky Moo Official, Mitchellanius, Mr. Dodongo, My pee-pee is hard. Niranu. Nito Torpedo.
Old Burgle.
Old Man Cranberry. Only LK. Gplant. PK Gaming. Potato Gaming HD. Quasar McDougal. Quillworth. Quinn. Reasonable Willow.
Reggie Rodriguez.
Sagitrash. Siren Smells Good.
Salty Smasher.
Sam Vertigo.
Sekai no Awarida.
Shod. Silver Bear 909.
Simp. God.
Sleepy Wabbit. Space Lizard. Special Children. Spooky Grimalkin. Squishword. Starbound. Sublime Cataclysm. Super Katsanova.
Super Sandwich Guy.
The Big Bubby. The Salt Knight.
Thrips Heartrop.
Timid the Writer. Travis Edwards. Twiddle Chungus.
V01156.
Vid.
Venom.
Vice Pup. Viewers Like You.
Vic. Walter Taggart.
Waposa. Weeb Trash.
Well, shit.
Winter Solstice. Zanny Tanner.
Yay, Kundo.
Young Citrus. Zachary Livesey.
Zachary V.
Zanaso.
Zane the Impure. Zane the Pure.
Zed Slayer Gamer. Zilvlin Ray. Cyberbunk.
If you'd like to help support the show and make it even better, check out my Patreon. We've got all kinds of goals and lots of rewards in store. Stay tuned for more. KBash out.